Hello friends. In today's class, we will talk about some very interesting concepts, that is cooperation, competition and another interesting phenomena called social loafing. What is cooperation? We hear the word cooperation very frequently in our lives. Cooperate with your friends, cooperate with people around you, cooperate in everything you do, wherever you are, extend cooperation to people. So, what is cooperation? Cooperation in the context of group processes is all about working together for mutually acceptable goals. So, when we are talking about cooperation, we are talking about a goal which is appealing to us and also has some value for the other person, the person with whom we are joining hands to achieve the stated goal. So, in case of cooperation, we are actually looking at one person extending his or her cooperation to more than one or more for a mutually acceptable goal. That is, there must be some commonality of purpose. Only then it would result in cooperation. Otherwise, what happens is, if it's a superior subordinate kind of relationship, or if it is a relationship where one person has more authority, greater power on the other individual, it becomes probably a case of either conformity or compliance or even obedience. But cooperation assumes that the goals are mutually beneficial, and there is also another assumption which is with respect to the status of the individuals. The people are expected to be having similar status level. Only in such cases we find cooperation. If there is a difference of status, if there is a difference in terms of authority, then it is not cooperation, but it becomes compliance or conformity or something else. Now, with respect to cooperation, especially in the context of a group of people, how does it work? Mintz conducted some very interesting experiments. What he did was, he took paper cones. You know cones, right? Ice cream cones, we all have cones. So, what he did was, he took paper cones and put them in a glass jar, a glass bottle with a narrow neck. So, the bottle neck was narrow and inside the bottle paper cones were placed. Now, each cone had a string attached to it. So, if you want to remove the cone from the bottle, you have to pull the string. The participants were told to take the cones out of the bottle. What do you think would have happened? Initially, people tried to pull it out and then they realized that the neck of the bottle is narrow and it will allow only one cone out at a time. So, immediately there was a kind of an understanding very quickly reached between the participants. One after the other, they pulled out the thread and pulled out their respective paper cones from the bottle. The whole thing went on very smoothly. People cooperated with each other and they were very understanding in allowing one participant to remove his or her cone from the bottle before they went on to remove their own cone from the bottle. So, there was no case of threads getting enmeshed, cones getting stuck or the bottle neck creating a problem. Then what Mintz did was, he tweaked the experiment a little. He introduced the concept of reward. He said, whoever pulls out the cones first is going to get a reward. And on top of that, there was an additional element of pressure created by introducing water into the bottle. From the bottom of the bottle, slowly water was being sent into the bottle, which meant the water level was rising from the bottom and the cones were kept, paper cones were kept in the bottle. The cones would get all soggy and messy, and whoever loses the cone loses the chance for a reward. What do you think happened? The first round, same participants who had demonstrated such cooperative behavior unlearned, forgot all about how they did things. Two factors: one, the pressure being created because of the water being let into the bottle, and two, the introduction of a reward. The reward was not really something earth shaking, it was a small little reward, but still people were immediately competing against each other to try and pull the cone out first, because whoever pulls it first obviously gets the reward. So, there was a scramble, lot of people pulling the cones, lot of people tugging at their threads, and near the bottleneck all these cones, there was a chaos and they were jammed, they were getting jammed. So, what was the end result? Originally the intention was to pull out all the paper cones. The first round it went off smoothly when people cooperated with each other, but in the second round they were not able to pull them out, and on the other hand the cones were also stuck, the threads got jammed, and a few of the cones also got soggy and could not be used at all. So, what was happening here? The minute there was a reward element, competition came into play rather than cooperation. It is very interesting how when the rewards, when the element of rewards, when there is a higher stake, cooperation is all forgotten, competition comes into picture. In every aspect of our lives, we have to work with groups. So, what happens if there is a problem which we need to solve as a group? How do people behave when there are problems or issues that need to be addressed as a group? Would the group show cooperative behavior? Would there be competition? How would it work? In fact, in a problem solving situation, what is the situation like? There is an issue that needs to be addressed. No one really knows how to reach to the solution. From the point of the problem to the point of solution, no one knows the entire path. So, there is a high degree of ambiguity, and there is also a low structure because there are no clearly defined steps. You take step 1, then move to step 2, then move to step 3, and that is how the problem will be solved. That is how the issue will be solved. No, it does not work that way. Probably that works when you are solving a mathematical equation, but when people as a group are trying to address a problem, there is a high degree of ambiguity and a very low degree of structure, which means different people come up with different ideas as to how this can be addressed. Let us say talk back about the same experiment of mints, right? Paper cones in a bottle, how to pull them out. There is high ambiguity in the sense that the cones are all inside the bottle neck is very narrow and they have to be pulled out carefully. At the same time, they need to keep time in mind because if the water level rises, the cones get soggy and the participant loses out. So, when there is an issue, how do we go about it? Someone might say pull them all out together. Someone might say since the water is moving in at a particular rate, make sure that the cones move up slowly. If there is a chance to discuss, if it is a problem solving kind of a situation, a third person might say, let us wait, let us pull it out one after the other. A fourth person might say, but wait, there is a concept of reward. So, who do we let, who do we allow to pull the cone out first? I want the reward, you want the reward, everyone wants the reward. So, how do we ensure that cooperation actually works? So, in a problem solving situation, 1, there is high degree of ambiguity, and 2, there is low structure. Anyone can come up with a suggestion and any person's suggestion could be accepted. So, the conventional roles and status in fact deter problem solving behavior and cooperative behavior in a problem solving situation. How does that work? Suppose one is a superior, couple of others are subordinates. Then the minute there is a superior subordinate relationship, the minute there is a person of authority, what happens is the others try to obey, try to fall in line, and in the bargain the problem solving situation is actually getting complicated. Solution is taking more time, or sometimes people have an idea, people have a solution, but they do not speak up, they defer to the authority. So, in a problem solving situation, conventional roles and status actually have a negative effect, a deleterious effect on cooperative behavior. Which brings us to something interesting, what are called the social dilemmas. What are dilemmas? Dilemmas are situations where you apparently have two ideas, two solutions, two ways of doing things in front of you, and you need to pick and choose one. Now imagine a social dilemma, a dilemma in the context of a group. So when there is a dilemma that a group needs to address, how would they go about it? Would they go with solution A? Would they go with solution B? Do they show cooperative behavior, or do they get suspicious and behave in a competitive manner? How does it work? Psychologists were interested in studying how these kind of things actually work out in a social context. So a series of games were created, what are called the non-zero sum games. Zero sum games are games where there is one winner and one loser. Suppose there is a race, two people running. One person touches the finish line, he or she is the winner, and whoever does not touch the finish line becomes the loser. So these are zero sum games. There is one clearly defined winner and one clearly defined loser, or the rest are losers. But there are non-zero sum games which are more complicated. The non-zero sum games are games where there is no clearly defined idea as to what action leads to a win. So that is where the element of whether to trust or not, whether to engage in a cooperative behavior or a competitive behavior comes into picture. Prisoner's dilemma is a very popular experiment that has been repeated. The first round was probably carried out somewhere in early 60s, late 50s. To this day, it is played in various contexts, and it has never failed to highlight how cooperative behavior versus competitive behavior and what the results would be like in a group context. So what are we talking about when we say prisoner's dilemma? See, the story is very simple. There are two thieves, two prisoners, two people who have been caught stealing, and these two people have been separated. The police wants to extract information, find out where they have hidden their loot. So what do the police authorities do? First and foremost, divide and rule. They separate the two thieves, take them into two different rooms. Now the prisoners are told, your friend has already told us, he has given in, he has told us, he has revealed where your stash is. Now prisoner 1 is told, 2 has given us information, 2 is told, 1 has given information, and they are also told, if you tell us the truth, if you cooperate, you will have a smaller sentence, your punishment will be lesser. So what is the question now in front of the prisoners? Do I cooperate or do I not? What is the trade-off? This situation works very well in various contexts. Company A versus company B. Do I trust them not to sabotage market for my product, or do I suspect and be careful? In a group context, should I give my notes to the other person or not? Do I trust him to be honest and share his notes with me, or do I act suspicious? Do I not act cooperative? Do I be competitive and hang on to my notes so that will give me an edge in my class? So, various situations this cooperative versus competitive behavior can be studied. In the prisoner's dilemma context, this has been adapted as a game to study group behavior in the group context. What do you think would have happened? People are given two situations. Either you pick up, say, two cards, a black card versus a red card. Either you pick up a black card or you pick up a red card. If both the teams pick up black card, both end up with 6 points. If both the team pick up red card, then both end up with negative 6 points. If one team picks up red and the other picks up black, then one gets +3 and other gets -3. So, the question is, do I trust the other group to pick up the same card as mine? Should I go with red or should I go with black? This game has been administered in several contexts, and repetitively what has been found is, what do you think are the possible results? If both the groups cooperate, both will end up with wins, but moderate wins. Both of the groups will not be able to, neither of the groups will be able to achieve the highest score. But if both the groups end up picking the same loser cards, both lose points. Again, cooperation where both either win or lose. But what happens if one picks up red and other picks up black? Which means one cooperates, the other doesn't. In such instances, one group ends up winning by a much larger majority and the other group ends up losing out on a huge margin. What do you think would be happening whenever this kind of a prisoner dilemma game is played, whenever this situation or this experiment is conducted? Repeatedly, what people found was groups always are trying to bring the other person down. Competitive behavior comes into picture. The few that demonstrate cooperative behavior in a few rounds also scored very high. Their personality was measured for things like trust, agreeableness, ability to believe in others. So, people who demonstrated cooperative behavior were also found to be high in terms of their trustworthiness and other things, which made them actually better team players. So, cooperative behavior versus competitive behavior, the social dilemmas were very interesting games which were created to study in which context cooperative behavior is seen and which context competitive behavior is seen. Now, let us assume there is a group and there is a particular bit of homework to be done. The homework is not given to one individual, it is given to a group of 4 students. And what is the homework? The homework is to read an entire chapter, come prepared and present to the class. Okay. Now, if the chapter is divided into 4 sections and each one studies his or her own section and comes and then delivers in the class or presents to the class, what is that actually? It is not actually a group process. It is just a combination of individual acts put together. So, in such cases, what was found was the degree of competition was lower because they were working individually, and the lack of cooperation, its effect was also lower.
What happens when two groups believe that they are competing with each other?
When two groups believe that they are competing with each other, the way they react to the situation depended on a lot of things. In fact, studies were conducted to precisely address this question: what happens when two groups believe that they are competing with each other? There were two groups who were given the task of developing a particular product. It could be anything. If you have to take an example, maybe make a few paper flowers, make a pot out of clay, something as simple as that, or it could be something as complex as designing a product for a commercial launch, a particular kind of soap. Okay. So, two groups have been given the same task. Now, what happens when two groups are believing that they are competing with each other for the same reward? What studies have found is, in situations when there is group product evaluation, the groups tended to over evaluate the quality of their own product, and they tended to under evaluate the quality of the other group's product, which means what I make or the answer I give, I consider it to be much better than a similar answer that another person gives. Let us take the example of, say, a test being administered in a class. There are two groups, both the groups are given a test, and both the groups have to come up with the answers, solutions. Now, group A feels that their solution is much better than what group B did. Similarly, group B feels that their solution is better than or a more optimal solution as compared to the solution given by group A. So, as a group, when they are believing that they are in competition to each other, what is happening is they are actually over evaluating the result of their effort. They are giving much more value to what they did than it actually deserves, and vice versa also is true, that is, they are underplaying the importance or the value of the creation of the opposite group or the competing group. This phenomena was even more pronounced when one group actually won something. Okay, when there is a win, when there is an issue to be addressed, two groups come up with a solution, and solution of, let us say, group A is picked up. Then what happens? Group A starts feeling that they are much better, or what they have done is much better than what the other group did. The difference is widened by over evaluation of their own solution and under evaluation of the competing group. This also happened because of several reasons the researchers found. Why is this happening? Why are people doing that? Why are they over evaluating what their group is doing, especially when you are talking in terms of competition, when two groups are just asked to do it without any concept of reward? The difference was not so obvious, but when they felt that they were competing with each other, in such cases over evaluation and under evaluation of others was much more apparent. This was because the group felt that they need to maintain the morale of the group. By telling themselves that they have done a great job, they are actually buoying up, pushing up the spirits of the group members. When there is no expectation of future competition, as in when the two groups feel that they are not going to compete again, they are not going to meet again, in such cases there is a greater over evaluation of their product, of whatever they have done, of their results. So, over evaluation here is also dependent on the prospect of future meetings with the competition. If we are talking about two groups who are part of a classroom, then in that case what is happening? These are students who see each other every day on a daily basis. during the duration of their 3 years of graduate program. So, in such cases the over evaluation was much lesser as compared to, let us say, take a TV program where groups compete for some rewards. In such cases, over evaluating their efforts, over evaluating their result was much more stronger and much more dominant, and underplaying, under evaluating the other group's effort was also much more pronounced, because once the TV show is recorded, people go their own ways. The two teams are going to disperse. They are not really going to meet again and compete for something else. So, in such situations, competition dominated. Cooperation wasn't really seen at all. Researchers also found that when a group member feels that he or she has a low status in the group, or when the position of the group member is insecure, in such cases there is a greater show of dissent, as in there is a lesser degree of cooperation involved and a greater show of competition. Why is this so? This is because people apparently feel that by being different, they will be seen as being intelligent, as being thoughtful. So, in the group context, whether a person is going to show cooperative behavior or competitive behavior would depend on several factors like the status of the individual in the group, the security with respect to group membership, whether the group is addressing this problem as a whole or whether the work is being parceled out, which essentially means that it is an amalgamation of individual work rather than group output, and whether there is a prospect of the two competing groups meeting each other or interacting with each other in the near future. These are the multiple reasons based on which we see either cooperative behavior or competitive behavior being demonstrated in the group context. There is another very interesting phenomena that we see when people are working in groups. Let me paint a picture for you all. Let me show you an example. There is a college fest going on. So, college festival means lot of work, lot of things to do, and mostly the students are picked up as volunteers, right? So, what happens? Teams are formed. One team is in charge of stage decorations, another team is in charge of getting contributions, a third team is in charge of compiling the guest list, a fourth team is in charge of taking care of travel and stay arrangements. So, in this way there are several teams which are working, and in each team probably 5 to 10 members would be there. This is a situation that all of us must have seen at some point in time. Now, in this kind of a situation, let us say there is a team which is working on travel arrangements and it is a team of 6 people. Do all the 6 people work and contribute in the same manner? Is their degree of involvement the same? Is their contribution the same? What do we see generally? It does not happen that way. There are a couple of people who are highly enthusiastic, committed, dedicated. There are a few people who, when asked, contribute, and there is always a small chunk where people join the group for whatever reasons, but they want to ride on the group's performance. They do not want to do anything, but they want to claim credit for whatever the group does. This is a very interesting thing that we find every day in our lives, and this is what is called social loafing. Social loafing is a phenomena that is observed in the group context on a widespread basis. Whenever there are more than 2 or 3 people involved in doing a project, especially when there is no clear demarcation of duties, social loafing comes into picture. So, social loafing can be understood as a reduction in effort and motivation in the group context. If I give a job to one single person and tell him do all the bookings, all the travel bookings for our 10 guests, the person is going to take charge immediately. But instead, suppose I form a committee and say you 6 are responsible for taking care of bookings without telling who is going to do what. Then what happens? All the members wait for somebody else to take initiative or wait for someone to provide direction. If at all one of them suggests how to go about it, a second person would have a second way of doing things, a third person would not like either of these, and the fourth person, because he does not like the way things are going, because his ideas are not being implemented, does not want to contribute at all. So, what is happening? There is a decrease in motivation and effort. There is a decrease in motivation and effort when people are assigned a job in the group context. This is called social loafing. Let me draw your attention to something else that all of us see very commonly. We go to several programs, or maybe someone comes to our college. What happens? We are asked to cheer for them, clap for them. When the entire college is clapping, imagine yourself standing in that group along with all your college mates. There is some guest who has come, who has addressed the class, who has addressed the gathering, and at the end of it you have to clap. How many people can clap very enthusiastically and how many clap just for the sake of clapping? Don't we find that people decrease the effort with which they clap? They just bring their hands together. Instead, if only one person is nominated to clap, what happens? They are going to clap really hard, isn't it? Again, a classic demonstration of how social loafing works. The minute a task is assigned to a group, individual responsibility goes down, individual effort goes down, and individual motivation also goes down. This is what social loafing is all about. So, what is happening in the context of social loafing? There is a de-individuation that is taking place. The minute it becomes a group responsibility, individual is no longer held accountable. Whether I clapped loudly or not, nobody is going to see. So, I will just put my hands together. Whether I have done the work or not, nobody is going to see. As long as all the travel arrangements are taken care of, the group has taken care of its responsibility. Nobody is going to question me, what did you do? In that kind of a situation, what is happening? There is a de-individuation. Individual responsibility is lost. The whole onus has shifted to the group. In such cases, social loafing becomes even more apparent. So, how do we counter this? When we put 4 people, the idea is 4 people will work more. We will get more out of it. So, how do we ensure that the group is more effective than 4 individuals put together? How do we ensure that the contribution is higher, the motivation is higher, the effort level is higher? How do we ensure that social loafing can be countered or decreased to as much an extent as possible? Social loafing can be minimized by the most obvious being making individual accountable, that is, make the output or effort directly linked to individual performance. If you do this bit, this is the output that is going to be. This is your part of the job. If there is a clear demarcation, that is one way of ensuring that social loafing can be avoided. Also, increasing the commitment of the individual to the group by feeling that, giving a sense of worth by being a part of the group, increasing the individual's commitment to the group. If the individual is highly committed to the group, if they have an identity that is distinct with the group, in such cases, the degree of motivation is higher. The willingness to get involved and work is higher. So, that would also contribute towards decreasing social loafing. Also, one more way of countering social loafing is increasing the importance of the task. If the task is made out to be very important, if we go back to our travel arrangements example, if the group is told very clearly, see, travel arrangements form the most important part of this entire college fest. Whoever does the travel arrangements is the one who is going to ensure, or who is going to be the public face. You are the ones who are going to be the first ones to receive these people. You are the ones who are going to receive the guests. So, the entire impression starts with you. So, your job is very important. So, improving or increasing the importance of the task is one more way in which social loafing can be mitigated. And lastly, setting minimum acceptable standards for every member of the group is also one more way in which you can ensure that social loafing, if not completely done away with, can at least be reduced to a great extent. So, in today's class, we have looked at three very interesting things: cooperation, competition and social loafing in the context of people working in groups. Thank you.